into this at-home edition of Bengals Breakdown. I am your host, Stone Shields, and coming up on today's show, we got a lot of things to discuss. Day 3 of Bengals training camp is underway by the time this video comes out. Practice will, in fact, be underway, so we got some stuff to talk about from days 1 and 2. Also, potential free agent signing at an interesting position, which we will get into on today's show. Also, Joe Burrow. Looks like he's definitely going to be playing more in the preseason, so we will discuss that as well. But before we get into that, make sure you guys hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so already. That's youtube.com/BengalsTV. We are trying to get to 20,000 subscribers prior to the first preseason game. So we got about a couple of weeks in order to make that happen. So help us out. Hit that sub button, youtube.com/BengalsTV. Now things really start to pick up, right? June and much of July was kind of a bit of a slog, right? Trying to come up with things to talk about. Obviously isn't the most, newsy time of the year for the NFL, but that certainly will change now that training camp is here, and then we'll have the preseason and the season and postseason hopefully as well. So plenty of stuff to talk about. Don't miss out. Hit that sub button for us and help us get to 20,000 subscribers. Let's start with the potential Noah Fant signing. So Jordan Schultz, NFL Insider, reported a couple of days ago that Fant was going to take a visit here in Cincinnati and ultimately decide if he wants to sign with the football team. And it kind of was interesting, right? Because, we talk about these free agent signings, whatever. We've done so many videos on them, and tight end doesn't really feel like a position of need for Cincinnati, especially the type of player that Noah Fant is. Mind you, this is a guy who was a first-round pick in 2019. Has his career necessarily panned out the way he would imagine? Maybe not, but I think he's been a really solid tight end. He's bounced around a little bit, right? Denver, Seattle, what have you. And, he's a guy, if he comes in, he's not really a block-first tight end, which I think Cincinnati could certainly use. He's kind of a redundant type of tight end based on what they have. And Paul Dehner Jr. of The Athletic kind of described it in a very similar situation, right? This is a guy that goes out and he catches passes and he's a threat in the passing game. And certainly, if the Bengals sign Fant, there's no question they get better offensively, but they've got weapons, right? And they've got a great quarterback, obviously, as well. So it would be interesting to see how, often he could get into the game plan with all the weapons that Cincinnati has. You can only throw the ball so many times, right? But it would be interesting. And if they would sign a guy like Noah Fant, I think he probably would replace a Tanner Hudson, and we've talked about Hudson potentially being a cut candidate for Cincinnati, but it would be tough to imagine they sign Noah Fant and also keep Tanner Hudson on the roster. So it'll be interesting. His visit apparently went well, but he's going to continue to take more visits, according to Jordan Schultz. I believe he's at New Orleans today. Maybe that was yesterday, but he's going to continue to take visits, and ultimately we will see if he decides to stay in Cincinnati or to sign with Cincinnati. And Ja'Marr Chase kind of touched on this, and he was like, yeah, who wouldn't want to come here and play in this scheme with the playmakers that we have? So it seemed like Ja'Marr was trying to recruit him a little bit, also said there's only so much he can do, and then ultimately he has to decide, he being Noah Fant, on what he wants to do as far as his career goes. But that's kind of the big free agency rumor around Cincinnati right now is Noah Fant. It's interesting. I think a lot of us would be like, why can't there be, a big-time offensive lineman that's coming in to visit, or perhaps a safety as well? But Noah Fant certainly would help this team get better. It'll be interesting to see if ultimately he does sign with Cincinnati. Pin comment time here on today's show. Do you want Noah Fant to sign with the Cincinnati Bengals? Type Y for yes or N for no in the comments section of today's show. All right, so 2 training camp practices in the books. Let's kind of recap them ever so slightly here. Joe Burrow, of course, spoke after day 1. Ja'Marr Chase spoke after day 2. And day 1 was won by the defense, which I think certainly is a positive sign. Seemingly early in camp, that kind of has been the story over recent years, and that was the story again here in 2025. There's a big play made by Josh Newton against Joe Burrow there at the end of practice, and Joe Burrow was visibly frustrated during his time talking with the media. The defense won the day, and I think that's positive for the Bengals and Al Golden. Al Golden is that X factor for this team in 2025. ESPN talked about it in their piece last week, and we've talked about it all offseason long. A lot of the defense, you're kind of just running it back. There's definitely some new faces and new draft picks, but they're putting all their chips on the table as far as Al Golden and hoping that he can really be a big-time difference maker for him. As I've talked about, I believe he can be. I think it's positive that the defense ultimately won the first day, and offense certainly responded a little bit in the second day and had a much better practice. But, we'll see. Al Golden's doing a lot of different stuff there as far as his rotations with his cornerbacks and where they're playing. Dax Hill, DJ Turner, Josh Newton, Cam Taylor, Britt, right? All those guys are playing all over the place. And he's just got to get a feel for where he wants those guys to line up. Because obviously the Bengals really didn't add any DBs. Got a couple of UDFAs. Who knows if they're going to make the team? Probably not. So it's going to be the same cast of characters at the back end of this defense. Obviously, a new man calling the shots, Al Golden instead of Lou Anarumo. It's going to be fascinating to see how that kind of works itself out as we get closer to the preseason and then ultimately closer to the regular season as well. So that rotation there from the defensive back certainly going to be interesting. Let's talk injuries here. There's no big-time injuries that have come up yet. Now, it's hot in Cincinnati, and Zach Taylor, I think, has done a good job of moving the practices up in the day. Their morning practices 10 to noon, I believe, is what they are doing right now. Joe Burrow was very appreciative of that, and he said that is the way that he prefers things to be done as far as training camp practices go. But, early on, some of these guys are having issues, right? Miles Murphy cramped up. He left the field, but it was just cramps. He's fine, right? T. Higgins, there was video of him getting stretched out. He was just fine, just kind of the heat, getting back into the swing of things. There was a video of Zach Taylor coming over and checking on him. He's going to be just fine. So some brief scares, but just heat-related stuff, cramping. Josh Newton was throwing up all over the field, and then he said that's just fear leaving the body, and that's a great way to put it, I think, talking about Josh Newton there. But nothing crazy as far as injuries go. But hopefully, as camp continues to go on, they'll be a little bit more in shape, up to speed, won't have as many cramping issues and stuff like that as it relates to the heat. But it's been hot here in Cincinnati. There absolutely is no doubt about it. All right, let's talk Joe Burrow. He's going to play more in the preseason. We kind of speculated that. Zach Taylor talked about that really early in the offseason at some of those, he mentioned it briefly at the Combine, but now it really has hammered home that, hey, Joe Burrow is going to play more in the preseason, and I think that is a positive thing for the Cincinnati Bengals. Look, is there some worry there that something could happen to Joe Burrow and he goes out there and gets dinged up in the preseason? Yeah, but I think Joe Burrow is fully behind playing in the preseason. It's something that really he hasn't experienced. Last year it was just a drive, and I think if he plays more in the preseason, we don't know exactly how much that's going to be. Like, does that mean he's just going to play one quarter of one game? I don't know if that's exactly enough. Of course, there is 3 games, and we'll see. Is he going to play an entire game? I would be surprised if that were the case. But I think Joe Burrow out there more in the preseason is beneficial for Cincinnati because we've been hammering it home all offseason. Everybody that talks or thinks about the Bengals is thinking the same thing. Got to start out better in September, and a lot of that's on Joe Burrow as well. That game against New England, the defense wasn't that bad. What did they give up? Less than 20 points in that game? Was it 16 points in that week 1 game against New England? I don't remember the exact score, something like that. But the offense didn't do anything in that game. It took Joe Burrow another game. He looked like Joe Burrow in week 2 against Kansas City last year. But, if Joe Burrow looks like himself in week 1, that team probably makes the playoffs, as crazy as that sounds. So, just it's all about getting off on the right foot. They're making adjustments, right? And I think that really is important. I think the quarterback's got to play more. And, it's a little bit different for guys that are getting in car crashes every single play. Maybe they don't need to play as much. But then again, the tackling was an issue early on as well. So I think if there's a position where you can afford to go out there and say this guy's going to play more, it's quarterback. But obviously that is the franchise. So but the guy with injury history as well. So there's definitely some concern there. But at the end of the day, it's football. It's contact. It's violent. Things happen. And, I think you got to roll the dice here, unfortunately, and see if, playing Burrow in the preseason is going to help because you've kind of tried some different things. This isn't a 1-year thing. This isn't a 2-year thing. Ever since Zach Taylor has been here, you have not been able to win in September. You need drastic change. I think the most drastic change you can make is to play your quarterback more in the preseason. It seems like that is what they're going to do. Burrow's on board. And it's just, we're going to have to wait and see exactly how much he is going to be playing. But I think it's something that everybody should be excited about. Now, I do want to end today's show with this conversation. Paul Dehner Jr. mentioned that things are kind of boring around the Cincinnati Bengals right now. Well, what's he mean by that? There's always some kind of internal distraction with this team, seemingly, in the offseason. Now, granted, there are distractions, 2 of them. Shemar, Stewart, and Trey Hendrickson. But those guys aren't there, right? It's not like they're showing up and holding in. They're just not there, period. And by the way, Apparently, Shemar Stewart sent a teammate a text saying that he's working his butt off, away from the team, what have you. That's fine. He's not working with the team. That's an issue. But at the end of the day, things are kind of boring right now with Cincinnati, and that's good because, as we've talked about, the Bengals are focused on themselves this training camp. No joint practices from Zach Taylor. I think it's the right call. They are working on internally getting better, and that's kind of been the approach this offseason. That's kind of the next big drastic change, right? No joint practices. We're just going to focus on us and us getting better and gaining continuity with one another and developing throughout the course of training camp. I like that, and seemingly that's what's been going on as well. And when you hear the beat reporters and everybody covering the team talk, as far as the locker room conversation, it's very, show up, do your job, get better, go home, get ready to do it again the next day. And I think that simplistic approach is going to be something that is beneficial for the Cincinnati Bengals, and we're ultimately going to see improvement as training camp progresses and the offseason and preseason progress as well. So it's kind of an update about where things stand for Cincinnati right now through 2 training camp practices. They are currently practicing right now as I film this video. If there's any noteworthy takeaways from that, we surely will get those out. And also they are off tomorrow, and then they will be back at it on Sunday. If you've made it to the end of today's show, we appreciate you. Show your appreciation for us by liking today's video for me right now. We'll have a new video for you guys tomorrow.